1212, it's your boy DJ Mike Marvelous back for another episode of Cheat Code. Today, we're going to talk about hooking up your equipment. So we got some good cheat code tips in today's tutorial about how to hook up XLRs, how to hook up quarter inch, when to use the booth, when to use the master, things like that. So let's get it started. Okay, so let's get right into it. Yours truly, DJ Mike Marvelous. We're going to talk about hooking up your equipment. We're going to talk about, today I'm going to show you a DDJ SX2. This is a Pioneer built for Serrato. We're going to talk a little bit about the master, input, output, the booth. We'll get into that, your different channels and the different types of hookups or cords you'll need to hook up some equipment like this. Now, for this particular controller, this comes with two separate master outputs. So you have your XLR, so these are XLR male outputs, and then you have your master outputs, RCA, and then you have your quarters for your Boof Out or TRS. So we'll talk a little bit more about these, but we'll start on the master, right? So you have your right and your left. That way you can play balanced, right? So in stereo mode, if somebody, a producer, produces a track where they throw drums or a verse to or a sound to the left, that will then play out of that right-hand side or that left-hand side. And if they play out of the right, it'll go in a balanced mode. Now, cheat code right off the bat, right? So again, this is the DDJ SX2 by Pioneer. I had a gig for a basketball event, and they wanted me to hook directly into their system that was built into the gym. Brand new gym, nice sound system. They had XLR inputs into their gym, right? So the challenge was they only had one, right? So you had to go one feed into their system. So we want to try and find the mono, or the line that will play all of the music in mono mode, not necessarily stereo, kicking left or right. Most of the equipment that I've used in the past, and here's your cheat code, have been mono is right? You play right and you'll get every sound that the song has in it. For this particular controller, which was odd to me, the DDJ SX2, left was the mono, the port for mono. So if you're ever going to play in an event where you're plugging into someone else's sound or a sound already created and they give you one line to plug into, if you want to go mono, now that may be what you don't want to do, right? But if that's the option that you have, play it left and you should get all the sound that you need. Okay, so that's a cheat code for today. Again, this is the DDJ SX2. They may have fixed that in others, or they may have just flipped mine and accidentally put mono on the left. But generally, like I said, when I use other equipment, it has always been mono right. And then you don't even have to fool with the left because your right channel will play all sound. Not in this case. This case, it was mono, was left. Okay, so that's a quick cheat code. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the XLR cable. The cable itself, this here has a male output, so you would need the female side cord. This is what the XLR cable looks like. And it's just 3 nubs or 3 pins that stick into here. And generally, this has a little clip that locks it in. So if somebody kicks the cable, it's not necessarily going to yank out unless you got a damaged clip. I usually live by the XLRs. I really like using the XLRs. They seem a little bit easier. They've given me less problems over the past. So whenever I can, I always defer to the XLRs. Now, a lot of the cheaper controllers do not have the XLR master outputs. And this is generally when you're hooking up to big sound systems. If you're doing big events and you're hooking up to sound systems, they're generally the outputs or inputs of those speakers are going to be XLR. Very rare will you find 12-inch woofers with RCA. I mean, unless you find some that are like in-house speakers that your dad or that you find. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be your dad. You could find some speakers that have the huge RCAs. I know the PA monitors that you can buy for your studio have RCA input. So generally that master out is used for something like that. Now, most of the cheaper controllers come with just the right and left RCA cables, right? So if you're going to do a large event and you're using big speakers, those big speakers don't have the RCA, you're going to have to buy additional equipment, probably a mixing board, right? And I'll show a picture of the mixing board here. This is something similar, something small, but it converts that RCA. It'll allow you to do the RCA from the controller into that mixing board, and then you can send out the XLR feeds to your sound system. So that is where kind of the difference of price starts to get closer, because now you have to buy additional equipment. Nothing wrong with, especially if you're just starting and you just want to practice and learning how to DJ, go with the smaller controller, use the RCA inputs for your in-house, or if you're only DJing online, who cares, right? Because the master line out, you'll probably just be using it as a booth, and we'll talk a little bit about that even more. You're just trying to hear the sound that you're playing in your house. You hook it up to some PA speakers, RCA is good enough, but you're good to go. But when it comes time to doing big events and start gigging, you're going to need some kind of XLR hookup for those big speakers. I mean, one of the speaker companies proved me wrong and show me big speakers with RCA outputs, because that's going to save people a lot of money. I don't know. If you know any, leave it in the comments. But generally what I've seen people do is buy an additional mixing board, or they call it a mixer. And then they go RCA into that mixing board or mixer, and then they go XLR out of that mixing board into the actual speakers. Okay? So master output 1, master output 2, XLR, RCA cables. And the RCA cables, if you haven't seen them, these are black and red, but usually they come red and white, right? So red is right, usually white is left, but in this case, they're black. I have my turntable RCA cables replaced, and I got some black and red ones right here. So that's what you're looking at here. But RCA nonetheless, RCA cables, that's what you can use that for. Okay, next item is the Boof Out. So master versus booth, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a few. So when to use the master versus when to use the booth. Let's talk about the connection first. So first you have what most people call your 1/4 inch connection, right? So these are your 1/4 inch cables. They look just like this, right? So this is your TRS, right? So TRS, also known as a 1/4 inch. TRS on here just stands for tip, ring, and sleeve, right? I almost said the other word. Tip, ring, and sleeve, right? So that's what TRS is, but most DJs I talk to and most musicians I talk to call this a 1/4 inch, right? The only difference between this and the one that you probably would use as a guitar input is the ring, right? So a guitar input may not have that ring. This just allows you to have play in stereo on this. It kind of has a left and right, so you have your right and your left. Allows you to play left and right on your tip, ring, and sleeve, right? So your TRS, also known as 1/4 inch. Now your Boof Out. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Boof Out, and I'll get into details about how to adjust that and what have you. Your master outputs is what the crowd is hearing when you're DJing, right? So these are your speakers pointed to the crowd. They are listening to what's coming out of that master output. Your booth is generally supposed to be for you. And I say this because, I'll give you another example. I played in, it was another gym. Usually if you play in gym, and this can be another cheat code, if you're going to have an event at a gym, you are going to get acoustics like crazy. And what I mean by that is sound is going to bounce off the wall and come back to you, which creates this clapping sound. So if you are mixing and you're listening to music, because that's what we do, we listen and mix, that clap is coming back late, and you're hearing a double clap sound, which is forcing the mix it's going to be tough for you to mix, right? What you can do is carry an additional booth speaker and set it towards yourself, and then put yourself into the booth, right? So you can go right, left, or go both. And then that will be your booth speaker, and that will keep you in the sound, and that clap you won't even hear it, because you'll be hearing the same music as the master. However, you're not going to get an additional clap because of the acoustics in the building. This is also helpful. I've done another gig where I was on a balcony. The main event was below me. The speakers for the master was below me, and I had a booth speaker on the balcony with me. So that way I was hearing the song in real time when I'm listening to the output. Now we'll talk a little bit about mixing in your headphones. That's an acquired, learned thing, to just mix totally in your headphones where this doesn't even matter. It's a booth speaker, whether you want to use it or not, it's up to you. I've seen many DJs go this route because they're generally behind the speakers. When you're mixing, speakers are either right next to you or technically in front of you, right? So the sound is going in front of you. You're kind of getting a muffled response, or not necessarily late, but you can't hear it as well. So I've learned to mix in my headphones, and that just came from me learning at a young age, trying to mix in my parents' house, and they did not want the music to be loud. So I learned how to mix, master and cueing in my headphones at the same time. Difficult, but if you get it, stuff like that won't matter. The booth speaker at the club isn't on right, and sounds crazy. Once you master mixing in the headphones, stuff like that won't matter. Okay? But we'll talk a little bit more about master versus booth. So let's talk a little bit about the booth versus the master, right? So we're only talking about this centerpiece right here, on the controller, right? So your master volume is what the crowd or the people at your event is actually hearing. So your master volume is there. Your booth volume is here, right? And then you have your headphone mix, right? So that's there. What is the headphone mix? So as you can see, the master and the headphone mix, if you turn the knob all the way to master, that is only going to give you what the crowd is hearing. So whatever the crowd is hearing, you're going to hear nothing but that inside of your headphone mix, right? Because you've turned the dial to master. If I turn it all the way to cue, I'm only hearing what is being queued up at the moment, right? So if something's playing and I only want to hear what I'm queuing up, I can go full cue. Now, this knob is helpful in Thanks Pioneer because it allows you to adjust that. And the reason that you may adjust that is if you don't have a booth available, right? But the sound is bouncing off of the walls. You may put both of your headphones on both ears, covering both ears, right? You don't have a booth. Sounds bouncing off the walls, but you want to hear some master, and sometimes you want to hear some cue. This allows you to kind of switch back and forth. Let me cue this up, but now I want a little bit of what they're hearing, and I'm mixing it. Now I'm about to mix it. Maybe I go full master during the mix with my headphones fully on. So this is how you mix in the headphones without having a booth. If you don't have a booth option, or you simply just don't have the equipment to have an additional speaker to be your booth, whatever the situation may be, you can do it all in your headphones. You can do all of it in your headphone. Now it's hard, but this allows you to adjust that, whether or not you do or not, right? So your booth volume is technically your booth volume. If you need to go up in your booth or your booth speaker, you would use this one. But this headphone mix allows you to mix in your headphones without disturbing the master, right? So let that play out. Like I can mix in a silent room with just this. I don't have to hook up a speaker because I can mix internally. Excuse me, I was going to say eternally. That may be something too. Cheat code, right? I can mix eternally. All right, so that is another option of mixing if you don't have that booth available, or if you don't have the additional equipment to have a booth. Go use your headphone mix to blend between master, what the crowd is hearing, and what you're queuing up. And I change this often because I generally mix in my headphones. That's just kind of how I learned, and how you can get it done. This may help also for my younger DJs that may be mixing in their parents' basement or even in their bedroom, and the parents are just going nuts because it sounds too loud. Do it in your headphones. Master. Just go all master. That's what the crowd's hearing, and then you can go cue. This also gives you the ability to truly, I think, I'm not sure how sporting events, I haven't had the luxury of, I've done a baseball game, but nothing at one of the major stadiums. But I don't know if they have a booth. So if they don't, you're going to need to use something like this. And if anybody has ever DJed at a stadium, let me know. Do they have a booth, or are you mixing in the headphones? And all of my DJs, if you ever had to mix in your headphones, leave a comment below. This thing will save your life. And again, these are cheat codes for our newer DJs, or maybe even some of my seasoned DJs that are getting trapped into these gigs where the sound is just horrible and you're having a difficult time mixing. Do it all in your headphones. Okay, next set we're going to talk about is the channels, right? So you have outputs for your channels. You have a mic, which I'm in right now, also that TRS, just like we talked about with the booth, right? It's a 1/4 inch going into the mic input for our channel 4, or I could have what's named here a CD, like a CDJ or a CD player, with RCA cables going into channel 4. Now there is a switch on the front that you can change that from mic to CD if I wanted to. So I could technically say, okay, I'm using the mic, the switch is switched to mic, right? So that's for your channel 4. My channel 2 can take a line or a phono, or in this case, phono or line, right? RCAs again. In this case, phono is for turntables, right? So there is a, I think it's DDS system baked into Serato where you can use turntables with your controller, or you can use turntables independently, right? This is where you would input your turntables. So with that, I can even use control records to control digital music from Serato, or as you see in the background, if I wanted to play, let's see if I can point to it, this KRS record, right? The real KRS wax vinyl, I can actually play that on the turntables with the Serato with digital records, right? So I could use my whole collection of real records and mix with digital records if I wanted to, right? That's been tested. It's pretty cool if you do that. I haven't seen it done live. I've never seen anyone take and pull a record out and mix that while they were using Serato. I haven't seen it done. Somebody do it. Maybe I'll do it on a video. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, phono is your turntable, right? So channel 2, this would be your right, because I'm on the opposite side of the mixer here. This will be your 2 turntable for channel 2, okay? Line could be people coming up to you with a phone, want to hook something up and play something from their phone. Don't do it. But if you had to, you could get a RCA to what we call a headphone jack line. So it's like a 2-1 splitter that will give you the option to play an external source of music if you needed to do that. Now there are some situations where you have to do that. I get it. I'm joking. But to mix that, yeah, good luck. All right. So I wouldn't sign up for that. But anyway, moving along. So this centerpiece here is called Signal GND. This is your ground, I guess you can call it screw. This is for, mostly I've used it for turntables. I haven't seen it used for anything else, but this is your ground wire to your turntables. So you would unscrew it a little bit, stick that ground wire from the turntable in, and this just gives you better sound, or this grounds your system, right? Because you get that hum sometimes, or you may even get it where your turntable is not reading. And I'm trying to do this with one hand, and it's making a fool out of me. Sometimes your sound wave is way off, and it's because you don't have that ground. You're getting that hum. Now, again, I did get my cords replaced. Shouts out to Be Easy for replacing my cords years ago. But I got my cords replaced. This is the ground that was given. It just popped off because I didn't tighten the ring. But this slips in, or both, the 1 and the 2 slips in here. You then tighten it up, you screw it in, and then that will ground your turntable. Because of how the turntable is set up, you will need to ground those turntables in order for the signal to be a little bit better. But they may have fixed that in the software as well. But I always ground my turntables just in case. I started off with Scratch Live, and you better ground your turntables if you're using Scratch Live. All right. Okay. Next item is channel 1. That is the same or similar to channel 2, where you have your phono for your one turntable or your left turntable, and then you have your line. You have another line input. So if you had to hook something else up, you could have multiple items hooked up into those line RCAs. I don't know what else you would do. I mean, you could do, just trying to think of some things that I've seen. Most cases is, hey, I have this thing on my phone, can you play it? Yeah, or I have this video. There's a good one. So I did an event where someone was calling in from overseas. Someone was in the military, and they wanted to do a video chat. with my clients for their birthday, and they wanted audio to be pushed out through the main speaker, and we used one of the line inputs for that. Again, it's a RCA to whatever they have in their system. If it's a computer or a laptop, usually a 1/4 inch will do. I'm sorry, not a 1/4 inch, a headphone jack will do. If they don't have that, yeah, so RCA to something, or in this case, that would work with your, if you had to get an additional mixing board, you can go directly into the mixing board from there and then collect that sound. So a couple of tips and tricks, and you know, this is what you can use it for. So phono or turntable and line. All right. Channel 3, again, is similar to Channel 4, where you'll have that CD option. So the CDJs, I've seen controllers set up with CDJs. I've seen digital mixers hooked up to CDJs. This is where your CDJ will go in Channel 3. This mic input is a special input. At first, I thought it was a Spacon input, and somebody let me know if you've used the Spacon in here, but it's not, really. It's a 1/4 inch or XLR. So I could put an XLR cable in here, or I could just stick the 1/4 inch in the middle. So pretty cool. Here, I'll show you. That is the 1/4 inch in, or you can pull that out. And I got the wrong end of the XLR. Where are you? Come on. Or I can use male XLR. Boom. And then I can push that in. Let me see if I can't. If I don't knock my gear over. Boom. So that is I would say, universal input for your mic. That's awesome to have. In case you didn't have a right cord, or you use the cord for something else and you want to go in as 1/4. I tend to use quarters. I'm sorry. I tend to use XLRs, even though I'm using a 1/4 today for this recording. I usually use XLRs. They tend to sound better, but maybe that's all in my head. But like I said, beginning, I like XLRs. They stay put. Right, so that is my spiel on that. So that is technically the cables that you need to hook up a dedicated system. You may see in the background, that's an old mixer, so you could do that as well. Hook up an additional mixer to that, and then have another system hooked up to the mixer, and then yeah. But anyway, yes. So technically, that's all you need to hook up a controller. You're going to need RCA. You're going to need XLR if you're hooking up to a bigger system. You're going to probably need some quarters for the booth, which we talked about. So if you have any questions, or you want to see some more of something, please leave it in the comments. Let me know. I'm trying to cover everything here. A little bit of everything. And just continue to follow, continue to share, continue to like. I just appreciate all of you watching these videos. Thank you. I'll continue to do my best to give you all of the cheat codes that I have learned in my years of DJing. Thank you. Be blessed. Have a great day.